Hi everyone. Today I'm talking about codependency and creativity. I got the idea to do this video from an email that someone sent me. We were talking about creativity and healing through creativity, and she said, a friend of mine said to me, where codependency is healed, creativity flows. And that always stuck with me. And when I read that, it really stuck with me too. And I felt like there was so much to unpack there. Where codependency is healed, creativity flows. I feel that it's especially relevant to INFJ and INFP personality types because we do tend to really struggle with codependent dynamics in our relationships, and we also struggle with creativity. So in today's video, I'm going to be looking at 3 big ways that codependency clashes with creativity. Now, number 1, within a codependent relationship, if you are the INFJ personality type, or the INFP personality type, which means you're a highly sensitive person, you're empathic, you're intuitive, you are usually taking on the caretaker role in that codependent relationship. And in that caretaker role, you are taking care of the other person's feelings. You either don't believe they can take care of their own feelings or they refuse to take care of their own feelings. So you've taken over a large part of that process for them. That's something that INFJ personality types and INFP personality types really tend to struggle with, is managing and processing or trying to process other people's emotions for them. So when you're in a codependent relationship and you are the caretaker, part of what you will do is that you will make sure to not do anything that's threatening to the other person. Now, this might be in an extreme relationship, like if you're with a severe alcoholic or a drug addict who's very volatile, who's very unpredictable, or a narcissist. You feel like you have to walk on eggshells, you have to watch everything you say. I know a lot of us grew up with parents who were like this, so that feels very familiar to us. It might not be that extreme though. It might just be that you have a partner or you have a friend who is really dealing with a lot and is not seeking treatment from the appropriate sources. Like maybe they really need to be in therapy, but they're not, and they're using you as their therapist. So you're kind of always there as the emotional caretaker, as the emotional support, as the unofficial counselor. And when this person has a crisis, which they often do, you are there to help them through the crisis. But what you're really doing is managing and trying to process their emotions for them. So when we're in this role, we tend to be constantly scanning the other person for signs of emotional agitation or emotional distress in any form. It could be as subtle as a change in the tone of their voice or a micro expression that passes over their face. But INFJ personality types and INFP personality types are very adept at picking up on these very small, subtle signs. And when we do pick up on them and we see something's going on, we really want to be careful not to escalate the person. And that will extend to our behavior throughout the entire relationship. So we're always trying to do things or sort of adjust our behavior to make sure that it's not threatening to them. Well, with creativity, we sometimes have to take risks. In fact, a lot of the time, we will be taking creative risks that might be threatening to other people. So this might be you're writing a memoir about your life, and that's threatening to your parents who can't handle what really happened during your childhood. It could be that you're writing poetry, and a lot of your real life is seeping through, and your partner feels paranoid about that, or exposed, or very insecure or not comfortable with that. It could be that you are writing erotica. It's totally fiction, but it's erotica, and your friends or some of your family members don't understand. They feel that you're moving outside of the container of your culture, you're being inappropriate, right? So you're taking these creative risks that other people might feel threatened by or insecure about, or they don't understand. And if you do have a lot of codependent dynamics in your relationships, this is going to be very hard for you to handle because you've sort of programmed yourself to never do anything threatening, to be that people pleaser, to be that person who is always there and is always supportive and really tends to de-escalate situations and be very accommodating so that the people around you can calm down and you can help them through their crises. So that's a big way that codependency clashes with creativity. And people who are entrenched in codependent relationships, they tend to be blocked from their creativity because of that very reason. They don't want to take risks. They don't want to threaten the people around them. Number 2, codependency takes a lot of your life force. If you have ever been in a long-term codependent relationship where you were aware it was a codependent relationship, you already know this. You may have even experienced, a situation where you thought you had chronic fatigue syndrome, and then you got a divorce and you realized, oh no, that chronic fatigue syndrome was coming from the fact that my partner was a narcissist. Or some other sort of physical ailment or condition where you felt exhausted all the time, you were always getting sick, you were always under the weather, and then you ended a key relationship in your life that was taking a lot from you. Suddenly you started to get better. Suddenly you realized there's a link here. That person was draining me, whether they meant to or not. Maybe the person was a full-blown narcissist, and maybe they just had some problems that they weren't really dealing with, and they were well-intentioned. They did care about me, but they were still draining me. They were still taking so much of my time and energy because they constantly needed me to rescue them, or they constantly needed me to caretake them, help them through their crisis, their emotions, whatever it was. Codependent relationships take a lot of life force, and they tend to give very little back. They don't nourish us. They only drain us. Creativity also takes a lot of life force. With creativity, you are bringing a new form into being. You are creating something that's literally never existed before in this reality, whether that's a book or a play or a song or a painting or a dance or a garden, whatever it is, you are giving birth to something. You are letting something borrow your life force so that it can get started having a life of its own. So it takes a lot of energy. For INFJ personality types and INFP personality types, the creative process itself can be exhausting, especially when we are in the first draft of something. We really are just pushing that new life into the world. It takes a lot of our life force energy. So if you're in a codependent relationship, you're not going to have enough life force energy to run you and your system and your body and the relationship and your creative process. That's just too much. It's not going to happen. And your system is going to shut down the creativity because you're choosing the codependent relationship. Usually when we're in a codependent relationship and we're the rescuer or we're the caretaker, that role is driven by fear. So it feels very rooted in survival for us. This is usually linked to childhood when we were forced to take care of a narcissistic parent or an addicted parent or a mentally ill parent, whatever it was, an emotionally absent parent. We were forced to either take care of that parent or take over the parenting duties, parent ourselves, and or both. So we had no choice then, and it was a survival tactic. It was a survival strategy that bleeds over into adulthood. And when we get into codependent relationships with a partner or people in our workplace or friends, we tend to feel that it's still survival based. So what's going to happen is you're going to make an inner choice a lot of the time without knowing it, creativity or codependency, and you're going to choose codependency because that's the one fueled by fear. That's the one that feels like, well, I have no choice. This is the way I have to be with people. If I don't do this, the love is going to be withdrawn. I'll be alone. I'll be abandoned. I won't have my needs for security and love and affection met, which is primal for human beings. It's so essential for us. We cannot function alone. We cannot function with no love. And so when that happens and those abandonment triggers really get switched on in our brain, we will always choose codependency if we're unaware of what's going on. If we can see, oh, I'm in a rescuer-victim situation. I'm in a narcissist-enabler situation. This isn't healthy for me. And even though I feel like if I leave this relationship, there will be no more love for me, rationally, I know that's not true. That's just my fear of abandonment kicking in from childhood. So once we can sever that relationship or disentangle ourselves from the relationship, distance ourselves from that dynamic, then we have a more conscious awareness of what's going on, and we can make the choice for creativity, which is a much more nourishing way to spend your life force energy. Number 3, in codependent relationships, we tend to play predefined roles. I just mentioned rescuer, victim, narcissist-enabler, it might be addict-enabler, it might be any of those, a mixed bag, all of the above, but we tend to play predefined roles. And neither person in the codependent relationship really expects that those roles will change, whether that's us or that's the other person. Much of the time, the other person does not want to change. They are happy with the way things are. They are happy being rescued. They are happy being taken care of. That feels good to them. They don't have to do as much work. They're not really interested in taking personal responsibility. They're not really interested in managing their own emotional reality. They want someone else to do it for them, especially if they're a narcissist. For us, the empath, the intuitive, the codependent one, as we tend to get labeled in these types of relationship, although both parties are codependent, we tend to have a little bit more awareness around our role. I think this is because we feel a deeper level of dissatisfaction. We're the one who is doing a lot of the work, carrying a lot of the burden, showing up and doing a lot of the emotional labor in the relationship. And even if we're completely unaware on the surface, on some level, that is not lost on us. We see what's going on. We feel that burden. So we tend to be the more unhappy one in the relationship. And we tend to be the one more open to changing our role. Now, when you start working with your own creativity, you start following your creative dreams, you will change. That's part of the creative process. When you get really deep into the creative process, you will change as a person. It might result in outward changes. You might change parts of your identity, parts of your appearance. It might be an inner change, an internal shift in the way you are, the way you show up in the world. But whether it's inner or outer or both, you will change. And you will experience a lot of backlash from the people around you, especially those that you are in codependent relationships with. Because part of your change is you will be conserving more of your energy for yourself and your creativity, your creative projects, your creative process. If you're in a relationship with an addict or a narcissist, or even just someone who's scared to do the work on their own, they've never done it before, they've always had you've been their crutch for a long time, they're not going to want to give that up. They're not going to want to give you up. And so they're going to really fight against that. There's going to be a lot of reactionary energy coming your way from them. Now, each one of these clashes between codependency and creativity, they each have the potential to shatter an old pattern. So even though when they're happening, they feel very uncomfortable, and they can feel so uncomfortable, we might back off of the work for a while and say, I don't want to do this. I just want to go back to the way things were. Things were easier back then, even though I was unhappy. But if we can hang tight through it, if we can just hold on through the discomfort, through feeling disoriented, and maybe I'm going to be abandoned and no one's going to like me anymore and I'm changing and I don't know what that means. If we can hang on through all of that, this really has the potential to shatter a lot of our old dysfunctional patterns. And those old dysfunctional patterns can then fall away, and then we have a lot more space for new patterns to come in. However, you have to make the choice consciously to go with the shattering. You have to make the choice of, okay, this is upending my relationship with this energy vampire, narcissist, well-meaning friend who I love, but definitely needs a therapist, not me. And I will still love them after they get a therapist and stop using me for free counseling sessions, right? So once you decide to change your relationship with these people and you decide to shift those codependent dynamics, that's when you can really bring in the new patterns. I'm going to be teaching about this topic and so much more in a new class called Healing Through Creativity. I got the inspiration for this class based on feedback from my audience. About a month ago, I sent out an email, what should I teach next? And people had so many great ideas for so many topics that I completely filled my class roster for this summer. So this is the one I'm tackling next, Healing Through Creativity. I'm really excited about this one. As with all my classes, it is going to be geared specifically towards INFJ personality types and INFP personality types. And I think that really is the secret sauce to my classes, I will say. In the class that I just finished last week, someone wrote me and they said, you know, I had my camera off during the last class session, but I actually openly wept when you talked about INFJs and INFPs living in two worlds at once. That really spoke to me, and I'd never felt so seen. I hear that from people all the time where they say, I've never felt so seen as a person, because I've never been able to have anyone acknowledge this deep intuitive part of me, and what an important part of my makeup it is, what an important part of me it is. So that's something I focus on in every one of my classes, regardless of topic. And I teach on lots of different topics, but we always come back to the center, which is that INFJ, INFP piece. What makes us different? How can we embrace our differences? How can we stop feeling like something's wrong with us and instead feel like our gifts are something that is actually very right with us? So we're going to be exploring that kind of territory in Healing Through Creativity as well. Please subscribe to my newsletter to get all the updates on the classes. I send out all the updates through my newsletter. You won't find it on my website. I never have time to update the website, so please subscribe to my newsletter to get all the notifications on when Healing Through Creativity opens. And please also like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out, helps the channel out. I really appreciate it. I will see you next. I have 2 more videos in this series, so I'll see you next time with more about healing through creativity. Thanks, everyone.